Thank you for a very thoughtful conversation. I just have very simple questions. There have been talks about reduction in the power tariff in the last few months. There were negotiations with IPPs that Kamran sitting leads of experience that, and Minister, your task force did that to him and others. We've done that, very successful, very nice. But in terms of reduction of tariff, the consumer, there talks about 8 to 10 rupees power tariff reduction per unit. So how do you bifurcate this 8 to 10 rupees, and when would we have the realization of this trend?
So, June 24 and now, the average industrial tariff has gone down by 11 rupees so far. By the removal of the cross subsidies and other factors like FCAs and QTAs having kicked in, right now you're 11 rupees cheaper per unit for industrial tariff than you were in June 24. We very realistically think that there is still room enough by taking different measures. There are 4 or 5 impact measures because of reviewing the contracts with IPPs, with the government plants, with the nuclear plants, with VABDA, with GENCOs, with the wind and solar ones, O&M, some to some extent, more to others. This entire IPP review contracts, when they have concluded, this should not have an impact of more than 2.5 to 3 rupees per unit on the overall pool price. I'm not talking of the industry. You can't ring fence a saving to a certain sector. The other is the reduction in taxes and also the advantages that we can harvest from lower interest rates on the DSS and also the cross subsidy, whatever is left of it, say 2.5 rupees. Over and above that, the reprofiling of the debt of the Chinese plants, which is still under consideration, and we are talking about it to them, and also to nationalize a certain part of the debt. So the nuclear power plants and other power plants whose debt is still most amount to pay and to service, then part of it needs to come out of the tariff structure and go in the overall pool of resources that we need to generate. So all in all, there are about 11 different measures which have certain amount of an impact each that cumulatively comes to a figure of 10 to 12 to 14 rupees in some cases. So we are evolving a strategy to try to talk on the basis of the reform process that we've already initiated and on the sustainability part of it to our development partners, and hopefully in the next 1 or 2 months we should conclude and go ahead with it. But in the meantime, irrespective of who says what, the surplus power will be made available to the industry at marginal cost, hopefully in the very near future, as is going on right now on an incremental basis. And we also might be interacting with some of the key economic divisions, like the IT ministry, like the finance ministry and the industries ministry, to see if there are any greenfield areas which could also start benefiting from the surplus marginal cost of energy, which comes out to between 21 and 24 rupees off the cuff figures. So this should also overall bring down the average cost of power for the industry, which is the most useful and efficient user of power. And hopefully the EV side should also pick up, but that's a bigger debate. We need to have other factors put in place for the EV demand to go up. And we've considerably reduced the price, and have also removed the cap for earning money on the charging stations part, so that it's more feasible for people to invest into that infrastructure.
Sir, you spoke briefly about the net metering policy, and we keep seeing articles in newspapers too. Yesterday there was one in the Express Tribune. So what's the thinking of the government, and what kind of directions are you looking at, timelines, etc. in this term? Thank you.
I would have loved to make it happen 6 months ago, but it was the peak of summers. We were new. Everybody said power is expensive, which was correct. So everybody started bashing us on that. We are pro solar. We are pro renewable. There's no second thought about that. But we are wanting to be responsible. We are paying a capacity charge to the distributed solar IPPs. So there are 200 and some thousand solar net meter owners. We are paying an additional cost of over 100 billion rupees for them for the entire pool. This will grow. This will grow more as the 1.2 gigawatts of solar distributed power that gets added on every year for the next 10 years, which we estimated it to be, and you would be as a pool net, as an on-grid power user, you'll be paying an additional cost of 500 billion rupees a year to these upper class IPP owners. So they are a burden on the rest of the pool. I am one of them. So that needs to be rationalized to the point where they earn the fuel price of it, the energy cost. Why should we pay them the capacity? So you're paying them 21 rupees right now. Your average fuel price on the grid is 9.5 to 10 rupees. Why should we pay them more? Why don't we link it to the fuel or marginal cost of energy? Again, they are producing 1.5 times their load. Some of them are, nobody's looking at their loads. Some of them have 3-4 times more than their load that. So they need to invest into rooftop solar to save, not to make money off somebody else. Not the grid, but even other consumers. That's what's happening. So the ballpark figure is they have an IRR of what? The payback period is 18 to 20 months. We want that to be rationalized to 4 to 5 years, the way it should be.
First of all, I would like to appreciate the fact that when you introduced this marginal cost of electricity for the winter package, you did for 3 years so that people could plan for the next 3 years for their winter capacity. But you just mentioned that you will also introduce further marginal. So will that cover the summer period also? That's question number one. And question number two is that we have surplus power in the south, for example in Sindh, where you just need to run the wind without any fuel cost, which is not being used because of transmission. In the future, as you said, there will be 7,000 megawatts mostly in South Hydro. So how do you intend to tap that? First for Sindh now in the next 2 years, and maybe for Punjab after the 2 years by giving it at lower rate.
We don't want to think in terms of regions or geographic. We don't want to geographically bifurcate Pakistan into these so-called different categories. I think that the market forces do that themselves. So if you have a brownfield incremental power at marginal cost availability to the entire industry, all the way from B1 to B4, so let them use it across the country at a certain rate. So when you introduce the greenfield part of it, so aluminum smelting, data centers, so let them, they would be the greenfield people who would be using that. In my humble opinion, the surplus power, although there's a lot of it, might not be there for too long if we allow a healthy mix of greenfield to be added on to the incremental power. Yes, there is a debate going on in the ministry where we are saying you might want to start auctioning out the capacity of, say, one plant or the other in the south or the north or wherever. So we're looking at different combinations. But the fact is that we are completely open and completely thinking about this in a very open way. I don't want to keep one unit to myself, even if it does not recover 1 rupee of a capacity charge for me. So the system charge has to be paid by the guys, the energy part of it, and we would give very clear visibility. There are 2 months in the year, which is May Unfortunately, because of Neelam Jairam being out of the system now, and also in August, where we might run out of power and we might be short in terms of power availability, but we'll give a clear visibility for the next 3 years, and we'll try to get the industry to be very comfortable in uh, presuming what the amount of incremental power could be that they could
So
utilize.
this is only for winter then?
No. Across the 3 years, we're wanting to give you visibility for the next 3 years and say कि ये 21 रुपए ये 22 रुपए, obviously it will be connected to the FCA would actually kick in. So if the fuel cost goes up and down, that will be passed on to you, and the advantage also so would be passed on to you. But on the basis of that, 3 years ago we wanted to give it on. There is another option कि मैं इस पूरी पावर को कह दूं कि let it be available for you to come and commit to through an auction process. But उसमें वो disparities होंगी और initially हम लोग incremental plus greenfield की बुझा रहे हैं. So we would appreciate if the PBC could also kindly give us as soon as you can some input on what those greenfield industries should or could be, that we could extend this surplus power benefit to, other than the incremental part.
Yeah, so going back to the question Niaz asked about rooftop solar, there's lots to engage with in what you said. If you think it's unfair that you have electricity in your grid at 9.5, if I heard you correctly, and you're buying it from me at 21, then I feel it's a bit unfair that I'm buying electricity from you at 60 plus, and yet you're buying mine at 21, right? So we will get into a bit of a back and forth with that. So if I may just put that aside for a moment and just ask you, if
I'd like to have a little more back and forth on that, if you allow me, after your question.
But I'd be more interested to hear what is your vision for how to advance the solar revolution, the photovoltaic revolution in Pakistan, because it's sweeping the world. We can't keep it at bay. And going by the way that I've been hearing you speak, it's very impressive. But how do we then become part of and get on board with the PV revolution sweeping the rest of the world?
So thank you for the question, Khurram sir. Ek to sir, please, I don't need to convince myself any further. I'm a strong believer of the fact that nobody is keeping anybody at bay. Your country has already seen the solar revolution. You're not in the middle of it. You're not behind anyone. Pakistan has been through the solar revolution. The off-grid connectivity of solar in households, commercial businesses, industry, the captive power that the industry and people are using, do not consider the net meter owners as the only scale of solar power you have in this country. Sir, you have gone through a revolution in solar. Pakistan is one of the leading countries in solar energy production today. So please be happy about that, and I'm quite content. Nobody is trying to keep the solar energy expansion or nobody is discouraging it from the government side. The taxes are still have been imposed. There is no negative measure that the government has taken. The Prime Minister has repeatedly committed to renewables. We are a clean energy mix country. 55% of your energy that you consumed last year was clean, was either solar, wind, nuclear, or hydro. This mix is going to go up to 88% in the existing IGSEP in the next 8 years. So, as far as clean energy is concerned and solar is concerned, we are absolutely going to continue encouraging it. The only issue is the net metering part. All countries have been through a process of evolution on this. Regulations have changed. Regulations on solar net metering systems have globally been aligned to the pricing structure of technology and the power on the grid itself. Yes, you might consider us to be unfair to give you power at say 61 rupees in peak hours and take power from you in off-peak hours where there is more supply of power at that point in time. This happens in Germany also. The off daylight hours power is more expensive that is offered by the grid to the people. In the daytime, it's not like that. But I am a strong believer of the fact that a fair price should be given to the consumer. Right now, the net metering people are a burden on the rest of the pool. All we want is, I'd like to, at the cost of repetition, say, all we want is a fair rate of return on the investment that households make in making their own systems more efficient. That's all I'm asking for. All I'm asking for is maybe in the regulations that whatever units I sell, whatever units I buy. So there is no net metering as such. Every accounted for unit has to be calculated and tabulated according to the price as set through the regulations. What will happen to me if that happens? Number one, out of the 215 or 16 odd thousand people who already signed a contract with NEPRA and have net metering systems, they will not be changed. So they will live the life of the contract that they were committed to by us. Anybody new who comes onto the net metering systems has to adhere by the regulations if and so approved by the cabinet in the next whatever amount of time the cabinet takes to approve that once you've given them this proposal.
You mentioned that is legislation present today for wheeling?
No, there's a wheeling charge that still has not been determined, sir. Otherwise, everything is in place. So when the markets open up, you could apply that wheeling charge and people could start wheeling, and that's what we're planning to do.
Is there a timeline which has been set for
Yeah, I just mentioned that you'll have a considerable amount every year that would be allowed to wheel for people to go off the grid, the ones that are on, and we'll have to bear the price for that, but we're ready to do that to open up the markets and translate the benefit to the bulk users.
Thank you so much.